She was already reaching into her clutch before I even made it through the revolving doors of the glass tower. There was no hello. There was no hug. There was just the sharp, aggressive scratch of a pen against a checkbook. Brittany didn't look at my face. She was staring at my boots. She tore the check out with a violent rip and shoved it against the front of my clean work jumpsuit. "Here's $500. She hissed, keeping her voice low enough that the men in tuxedos behind her wouldn't hear. "Go wait in your truck. You smell like ozone and failure. And you are scaring the investors. Before we see if I took the money, drop a comment and let me know where you are listening from right now. And what time it is for you. I love seeing how global our community is." I didn't cry. I didn't ask why she was doing this. I just looked at her hands. They were shaking, not from fear, but from the desperate need to control the optics of the room. I took the check from her. I held it up to the light of the crystal chandelier hanging above us. Then, slowly, deliberately, I tore it perfectly down the middle. The sound was louder than the jazz music playing in the lobby. I let the two halves flutter down onto her open-toed designer heels. "You are right," I said, my voice flat and calm. "I don't belong here. And honestly, neither do you." I turned around and walked out. I didn't call a taxi. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I had saved under priority. It wasn't my mother. It was Mr. Pobliater. "Sterling?" I sat in my truck, watching the valet park luxury cars that cost more than my parents' house. I didn't feel angry. Anger is hot. It is messy. What I felt was cold. It was clinical. I watched Brittany through the glass walls of the lobby, smiling, laughing, touching the arms of powerful men, pretending she belonged in their world. For years, I had let her treat me like this. I used to think she was just mean. I used to think she was just stressed. But sitting there in the dark cab of my truck, smelling the faint scent of welded steel on my skin, I finally understood the architecture of our relationship. It wasn't personal. It was structural. Psychologists call it the scapegoat mechanism. But in our house, we just called it survival. Brittany was the golden child. She was the one who got the praise. The acceptance letters. The silk dresses. I was the utility. I was the one who fixed the leaky faucets. The one who changed the tires. The one who got grease under her fingernails. But the system only worked if I stayed at the bottom. See, Brittany's confidence wasn't self-generated. It was a comparative metric. She didn't feel smart unless she could point out that I wasn't educated. She didn't feel wealthy unless she could hand me $500 like I was a charity case. My failure was the fuel for her success. She needed me to be the embarrassing sister in the work boots so she could be the elegant sister in the high-rise. If I rose up, if I showed the world that I was actually the one holding the blueprints, her entire identity would collapse. She wasn't protecting the investors from me. She was protecting her own fragile ego from the truth. I wasn't the black sheep. I was the scapegoat. She sacrificed every single day to keep her illusion alive. But tonight, the sacrifice was over. I looked at my phone. The call connected. "Mr. Sterling," I said, "we need to talk about the structural integrity of your investment." I wasn't calling as a sister anymore. I was calling as the lead consultant, and I was done being the silence that let her be loud. I drove past the city limits, leaving the glittering lights of the downtown skyline in my rearview mirror. My sanctuary wasn't a penthouse suite or a marble lobby. It was a converted warehouse in the industrial district. A place where the air always tasted like iron and ozone. When I slid the heavy metal door open, the darkness inside felt welcoming. It felt honest. I didn't turn on the overhead fluorescents. I just flipped the switch on my welding rig, letting the blue arc of the pilot light cut through the shadows. I took off my jacket and rolled up the sleeves of my jumpsuit. Under the harsh blue light, the scars on my arms looked like maps. There was a jagged line of white tissue near my elbow from a slip on a high-rise girder in Chicago. There was a patch of burnished skin on my wrist from a splash of molten slag in Detroit. Brittany hated looking at my arms. She called them disgusting. She told me to wear long sleeves at family dinners because my skin made people uncomfortable. She said I looked like I had been in a war. She was right about the war part. But she was wrong about the discomfort. To her, a scar was a defect. It was a failure of perfection. In her world of real estate staging and Instagram filters, everything had to be smooth. Everything had to be polished. If something was broken, you threw it away, or you covered it up with a coat of expensive paint. But she didn't understand the language of metal. She didn't understand that steel is weak until it has been burned. It is just raw potential, until you introduce it to fire. Mr. Sterling understood. The first time we met, he didn't look at my resume. He looked at my hands. He saw the burns and the calluses, and he nodded. He told me about wabi-sabi. It is a Japanese aesthetic, a philosophy that finds beauty in things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. It honors the cracks in the teacup, the moss on the rock, the weathering on the wood. It says that the history of an object is what gives it value. Brittany sold illusions. She sold the idea that life could be perfect if you just bought the right condo with the right view. I built reality. I built the skeletons that held those illusions up. The project at the glass tower wasn't just another job for me. It was my masterpiece. I called it the Titan Spine. It was a massive, exposed lattice of structural steel that ran through the center of the penthouse. I hadn't hidden the welds. I had highlighted them. I had woven the metal together in complex, organic patterns that looked like veins, like roots. It was raw. It was aggressive. It was beautiful because it showed exactly how the building stood up. It was the ultimate expression of wabi-sabi in a billion-dollar zip code. I picked up my grinder and let the sparks fly. A shower of orange fire against the dark. Brittany thought I was the failure because I didn't have a degree on my wall. She didn't know that the man she was trying to impress had paid me 3 times her commission just to design the thing she was standing on. She was terrified of the cracks. I was the one who filled them with gold. The next morning, I woke up to a silence that felt heavy. It was the kind of silence that comes before a detonation. I checked my phone. 14 missed calls. 22 text messages. All from Brittany. I didn't listen to them all. But the preview lines told me everything I needed to know. You ruined the vibe. Mr. Sterling asked where you were, and I had to lie. You serve no purpose other than to embarrass me. You need to apologize to me before I even think about letting you back into this family. There was no remorse. There was no "are you okay?" It was just pure, unadulterated narcissism. She was rewriting history in real time, casting herself as the victim of my existence. I put the phone down on the kitchen counter. I didn't feel the urge to defend myself. I felt the cold, sharp clarity of a judge reading a verdict. Then, my phone buzzed with a different kind of notification. It was a security alert from the site app. Motion detected, penthouse level, zone 4. I frowned. It was 6 a.m. on a Sunday. No crews were scheduled. The site was supposed to be locked down for the final walkthrough with Mr. Sterling later that afternoon. I opened the app and pulled up the live feed from the security cameras. The grainy footage flickered for a second before snapping into focus. I saw Brittany. She wasn't alone. She was directing 3 men in white painter's coveralls. They were setting up ladders and tarps around the center of the main living space. My stomach dropped. They weren't setting up for a party. They were setting up to work. I zoomed in on the feed. Brittany was pointing frantically at the Titan spine. She was waving her arms, screaming something I couldn't hear. But her body language was clear. She hated it. One of the men opened a bucket of thick, white drywall primer. He dipped a roller into it and reached up. No. I said the word out loud to the empty room. He rolled the thick white sludge over the exposed steel. He covered the intricate weld patterns. He covered the heat-blued joints. He covered the art. Brittany clapped her hands together, nodding. She was erasing it. She was sanitizing the building. She was turning my structural masterpiece into a generic, whitewashed column because it didn't fit her clean girl aesthetic. This wasn't just an insult anymore. It wasn't just a family spat. This was a breach of contract. The historical integrity clause in the development agreement specifically stated that the structural elements were to remain exposed and unaltered. By painting over them, she wasn't just ruining the design, she was compromising the fire rating of the steel. She was technically vandalizing a $12 million asset to make her sales pitch easier. I watched the white paint swallow the steel. I didn't call her to stop it. I didn't scream. I just took a screenshot. Then another. I was building a case file. She wanted to play the professional. She wanted to talk about standards. Fine. I stood up and walked to my closet. I pushed past the one dress I owned and grabbed my site boots. I grabbed my hard hat. I grabbed my lanyard with the badge that said, Lead Structural Consultant. She thought she had kicked her little sister out of the party. She had no idea she had just invited the site supervisor to an inspection. I didn't drive back to the city like I was fleeing a crime scene. I drove like I was responding to one. When I pulled up to the valet stand at the glass tower for the second time that weekend, the morning sun was hitting the windows, turning the whole building into a pillar of fire. The same valet from the night before stepped forward, looking confused. He started to wave me off, probably assuming I was a delivery driver lost on a Sunday. I didn't roll down the window to explain. I just got out. I slammed the heavy door of my truck and walked straight toward the revolving glass. My boots hit the pavement with a heavy, rhythmic thud. Heel. 2. Heel. 2. It was a different sound than the click of high heels. It was the sound of industry, the doorman, a guy named Marcus, who had smirked when Brittany handed me that check. Stepped into my path. He held up a white-gloved hand. "Excuse me, miss," he said, his voice dripping with that polite condescension they teach in hospitality school. "Service entrance is around the back. Guests only in the lobby." I didn't stop walking. I didn't even slow down. I just reached into my pocket and pulled out the lanyard. I didn't speak. I just held the hard plastic card up to his face. He blinked. He read the words, "Level 5 security clearance. Site supervisor. J. Turner." Then he looked at the photo, then back at me. His smirk vanished. He stepped aside so fast he almost tripped over his own feet. I walked past him without a glance. I didn't need his permission to enter. I had the keys to the kingdom. The elevator carried me toward the penthouse in a steady climb that lasted 45 seconds. I watched the numbers flick upward: 10, 20, 30, each increment marked by a faint shift in pressure that made my ears pop. I tightened my grip on the hard hat tucked under my arm. The anger I'd felt earlier had burned off, leaving something sharper, cooler. I wasn't emotional anymore. I was diagnostic, a system assessing failures. When the doors opened on the 45th floor, the first thing that greeted me was a pungent chemical odor, not wine. Not perfume, but the unmistakable sting of fresh latex paint. The marble hallway carried sound well, and I heard Brittany before I saw her. She was using her bright, brittle sales voice, the one she saved for big commissions. "You're going to adore the natural light." "Mr. Sterling," she chirped. We had a small issue with some industrial remnants, but my team resolved it. Much more refined now. Much more livable. I stepped into the main room, a gleaming expanse of glass and sky. Brittany posed beside the windows like an actress on a stage, while Mr. Sterling stood with his back to me, studying the center column, the one smeared with thick, dripping white paint. Brittany spotted me and froze. Her eyes flicked from my face to my work boots, then anxiously to Mr. Sterling. "You," she hissed. "What are you doing here? I told you." "Mr. Sterling turned. He ignored her completely, his attention fixed on me with a calm, precise recognition. "Jessica," he said with a curt nod. Brittany released a strangled laugh. "Mr. Sterling, I'm so sorry. This is my sister, the one with the issues. She must have gotten past security. I'll have her escorted out right away." She raised her phone, thumb hovering. "Jessica, leave. Now. Before I call the police." I didn't bother answering her. I walked straight to the column. The latex coating was uneven, sloppy, smothering the steel's intricate pattern beneath the chalky film. It looked like someone had slapped a bandage over a bone fracture. I dipped a fingertip in the wet paint, rubbed it between my fingers, and let my voice carry through the cavernous room. "Latex," I said, "water-based. And you put it directly on unprimed carbon steel? Do you know what happens when moisture gets trapped between steel and latex?" "Brittany." She blinked, confused. "What?" "Corrosion," I said. "It rots from inside out. You didn't fix a problem, you created one. This entire joint will be compromised within 6 months." "Mr. Sterling stepped beside me, withdrew a brass key, and scraped a harsh, decisive line through the paint. The screech made Brittany flinch. When he exposed the dark steel beneath, he studied it with a slow, calculating calm. "Who covered this?" he asked quietly. Brittany straightened, trying to recover authority. "I did well. My team, it looked unfinished. I knew someone of your taste wouldn't want raw construction in a living space. I improved it for you." He didn't look at her. "Jessica, was it unfinished?" I shook my head. "No." "Sear? That's a triple pass weave. Structural and aesthetic. It reveals the load path. It's the building's spine." Brittany scoffed, panicked. "It's a pipe." "Jessica, stop romanticizing it." "Mr. Sterling finally turned toward her. "This isn't a pipe," he said evenly. He pointed to a small, raised ridge barely visible beneath the paint. "It's a signature." Silence flooded the room. Those 5 seconds felt endless. I listened to the Hvac hum air moving through vents I'd installed years before. I watched Brittany's face drain of color as she realized what she'd destroyed. Then Mr. Sterling broke the silence. "I'm not purchasing a penthouse from you. he said. She inhaled sharply. Trembling. We can repair it, scrape the paint. Replace the crew, whatever you want. Please. This is my biggest sale of the year. He gave a dry, humorless laugh. You misunderstand. I'm not the buyer. I'm the developer. I own this building and the steel you defaced. He gestured around the room. This floor was removed from the market months ago. It's designated to be the headquarters for J.S. Structural Design. Brittany stared at me. Stunned. Jessica. He nodded. You just vandalized your sister's office. Security will escort you out. Permanently revoke her firm's access. She wilted. Not dragged. Just defeated. The elevator closed behind her with a soft, final click. The quiet that followed felt clean. Mr. Sterling examined the scratched column. I'll bring a restoration team to strip the latex. I rested my hand on the rough metal beneath the paint. No. Leave it. It's part of the story now. A reminder that some people try to cover what they don't understand. Let it stand. He nodded. Your office. Your call. Brittany never came to the opening. She lost the listing. Then her job. And now shows cramped rentals to college students still chasing the illusion of success. I stayed. Still in my boot. Still smelling of iron and ozone. Still working 45 floors above the world. Quiet. Steady. Shaping the structures that keep everything standing. If you've ever been underestimated by someone obsessed only with surfaces, share this. Paint peels. Foundations endure.